You know what I freaking love? Those Belgian chocolate cookies that you can get at Costco. They are to die for. And they... Wait a minute. Hold up. Oh, sorry. Wrong topic. When it comes to gaming, I am a glutton for punishment. I love me some difficult games, so it should come as no surprise that someone like me is a big fan of the Fire Emblem series and the From Software catalog. However, I've been a Fire Emblem fan since the GBA days. I only recently really became a Dark Souls fan. It all started actually the Christmas before Elden Ring. I saw the trailers for Elden Ring and thought, wow, this looks like a lot of fun. But maybe I ought to give Dark Souls a try again. So I went back and I played it. I got it for Christmas and just absolutely fell in love with the game. I could not put it down. Which of course led on to a landslide of just me playing through the games, and I've played more than half of the series now. And there's always been something that kind of bugs me. I hear online about the From Software games. And it's that the reason why they're so good is because they finally gave gamers a difficult challenge that doesn't hold your hand. But wait a minute. Fire Emblem's been doing that since way before Dark Souls ever did. Fire Emblem has plenty of difficulty and hardly ever holds your hand. It is a brutal game. So what's the difference here? Well, that's what I hope to talk about today, because I think it brings up a very interesting discussion. So, hello world, my name is McDaddy, and today we're going to talk about why Fire Emblem was forced to change and Dark Souls was not. My English teachers, as I'm sure many of yours have stated, you should start with your thesis. Well, let's go ahead and please them today, and I'm going to give you my main thoughts right now. The original Fire Emblem formula, despite the fact that it is just as valid and well crafted as the Dark Souls formula, it just was not popular enough and had to be changed to accommodate more players. Before we get started, I just want to clarify a few things about this video. It's largely me thinking out loud, so I'm totally down for hearing anyone in the comments who thinks that I'm incorrect here, or anyone who just has more to add to the conversation, because I'm totally fine being wrong. I'm totally fine learning more. It's always fun to hear what other people have to say about some of your thoughts. That's what I think anyways. I want to clarify also that my argument here might seem a little bit obvious, but it still brings up an interesting discussion about several topics. So first, the discussion of art and the challenges of making a product and facing popularity and what is popular. It also tackles the idea of there are different kinds of difficulty out there. Have you ever tried to 100% Crash Bandicoot? I have, and it was miserable. I gave up. I'll admit it, I gave up. Why? You have to clear every level without getting hit, without dying, and you have to collect all the collectibles and destroy all the crates. It's honestly ridiculous. Essentially, it is requiring perfection. That is a different type of difficulty, really, than the Dark Souls formula. I think that's something that most people know, but it's important to remember that difficulty is not just on a spectrum from easy to hard. There's also different kinds of difficulty. And so today, we're going to be comparing two different games with different types of difficulty and try to figure out why one type of difficulty didn't land well and the other type stuck it perfectly. And of course, it's always good to clarify, I'm not necessarily saying that one of these two series is better than the other. No, I love them both to death. So that's not the point. I really just want to look at this because I think it's a very interesting discussion. So most of us have probably heard the famous Dark Souls mantra, get good. Well, I honestly think that's kind of funny. because I don't think that's really the true motto of Dark Souls. The true motto of Dark Souls is really never give up. You see, the Dark Souls formula is punishing. It is. It's hard, or at least it can be for many players. But really, it's not that punishing. You are free to try over and over and over again with very little punishment. It's a game that encourages you to keep trying, to keep going. Yes, learn the boss, but that's really what it comes down to. It's designed to give you that dopamine rush for finally overcoming something. Fire Emblem, on the other hand, is not intended to be a fair difficulty. The difficulty formula for Fire Emblem really can be found in the song. Fire Emblem, Epic Warfare Simulation. Now, keep in mind, when I'm talking about the Fire Emblem formula, I'm specifically referring to the original formula proposed by Shozo Kaga, the father of the series. So really, the idea was you are the leader of an army, and your goal is to learn how to manage risks. That's what it's all about. And you can see this in the way it's all designed. Also, the many other factors that play into what it's like to lead an army. For example, in many other tactical RPGs, the soldiers you use are either nameless or they're Bob the generic soldier. Fire Emblem, it's not the case. The soldiers you use have a personality. They have a character. You're not just sending out pawns to die. You're sending people you care about into the fray. Another example that plays into the system is money management. You've got to learn how to manage your money in the Fire Emblem series. That's part of being a leader. You've got to budget correctly and not waste your money on things you don't need. And of course, we can't forget Fire Emblem's original signature mechanic of permadeath. When your characters die, they're gone forever.
So this is the last place I'll see. Still, dying while fighting at your side is not so terrible a way to go.
And to make things even more crazy, critical hits do 3 times the damage.
Let's test your mettle.
Allow me to demonstrate!
The critical hit system simulates real medieval combat. The idea that you hit them just right and they die instantly. Hopefully, this is making the point that I said earlier clear. The goal of Fire Emblem is to put the player in a position where they have to make a lot of judgments on risks. What risks should I take? Should I go in hard and fast? Should I play more defensively? Killer weapons have a very high critical hit, so you have to think, do I go in and just pray I don't get critically hit? Or should I send a heavy armored unit in who I know can tank the hit? It's a lot of these risks. Are you going to be more of a risk taker, or are you going to be more of a safe player? And you're going to have to probably do a little bit of both. That's really what it comes down to. And so this is why I say, really, the motto, get good, applies better to Fire Emblem than it does Dark Souls. Now, can elements of this be seen in Dark Souls as well? Yes. However, in games like Elden Ring, Dark Souls, Sekiro, all the From Software catalog, if your hitbox hits their hurtbox, you hit. There's no probability in that exchange. Fire Emblem, like many other RPGs, not everything is 100% hit. You may have to look at someone with an 80% hit, and then look at another character with a 90% hit, and have to make the decision, well, who do I use? Because maybe that 90% sounds good, but you might also need them to take out a different enemy. Yes, there is some risk management in the From Software Dark Souls formula, but it's not quite as prominent as it is in Fire Emblem. Furthermore, in Dark Souls, weapons break, right? Yes, but souls are so abundant in Dark Souls, it's really not that hard to get currency. Fire Emblem, currency is finite. It's very hard to find money sometimes. It does depend on the game, yes, but generally speaking, you're not going to be getting money as easily as you can in Dark Souls, or any other Souls-like that I've played thus far. And you have to manage your money a little bit. I have yet to play a tactical game that makes me feel like a military leader like Fire Emblem. I think it does it the best. Yes, RTS games are great at capturing that real-time feel, but once again, all the units you use are just streams of data. They're just pawns. You send them to die. Fire Emblem, I care about these characters. So my decisions really feel like they matter. It's not just about the tactics, and it's a vibe I've yet to find in any other series. Fire Emblem is not just an RPG. It's really half RPG, half simulator. Dark Souls, on the other hand, gives me a challenge that I love in an action setting. I love me some good action games too, and have since I was a kid. Dark Souls really feeds that hunger. To kind of summarize my points here, let's go ahead and compare all of this to basketball. Dark Souls is like putting you at half court and telling you, make a half-court shot. It doesn't matter how you do it, you can use any wacky technique you want, and you have an unlimited amount of tries. Fire Emblem, on the other hand, is more akin to playing an actual game. There's strategy, there's knowing your opponent, and there are absolutely multiple ways you can win a game, but you really need to understand the deep mechanics of the game to really be successful. And while we're at it, Crash Bandicoot would be telling you have to make a full court shot 5 times in a row, and if you miss one, you have to start all the way over at 1. And really, I guess that's not just Crash Bandicoot, you could also include that into no-hit challenge runs from Dark Souls as well. I know this isn't a perfect analogy. Fire Emblem basketball, you'd be playing against robots, you'd be outnumbered, and there'd be a lot of random elements added. But I think overall it gives you a good summary of what I'm talking about. But, sadly, the truth is, not very many people really want to be a leader in this way. Most people, the developers of the Fire Emblem series have revealed, play on casual difficulty, the new mode that was introduced later in the series that, simply put, removes permadeath from the game. And it makes a lot of sense to me. This gets into the discussion about art and creating a product. One thing that's just kind of sad about that whole topic is sometimes you work so hard, you handcraft, you make this really beautiful thing, but nobody cares about it. And it's not that what you made was bad, it's not that what you made was poorly conceived, it's more that popularity is not in your favor. A pretty good example of this that I think of is the band Hiatus Kaiyote, one of my favorite bands nowadays. They're an Australian, well, I would call them an experimental R&B group, and they are phenomenal musicians. They make some of the best music out nowadays, and they have a cult following, but they're not what you would call mainstream by any stretch of the imagination. And it doesn't mean they're bad, it just simply means that what they produce is not necessarily something that everybody enjoys. Because let's be real, experimental music can be pretty hard for some people to digest.
Might not get it, might not get any better.
And that's just kind of a hard thing about art. Sometimes you make something and people just don't care. And I think in this case, many people, when they played Fire Emblem, they just said, man, I just don't want to have to worry about my characters dying. I don't really know if this game is for me. And because of that, something had to change. You see, Fire Emblem is a Nintendo product. And if you want to be part of Nintendo, you've got to make the money. If you don't make the money, then you're going to have to get dropped. So Fire Emblem was pushed with a choice. Do we maintain the formula and die? Or do we change the formula and hope that other people pick it up? And really, that's what had to happen. They introduced casual mode, and players started coming in and playing the game a lot more. And it really brings up another discussion about what do you do when something becomes unpopular like this? Do you stick to your guns and let it die? Or do you change and adapt and keep it going? And major changes can be really hard on a fan base. I mean, there's plenty of elitists in the Fire Emblem community who only play the old games, and I really don't blame them for feeling that way. If Dark Souls was not very popular, then would you rather, as the player, have them add difficulty options and the game keeps going, or have them just stop making games with the Dark Souls formula? It's a very interesting question, and I don't really know how to answer it. Personally, with Fire Emblem, I'm glad it's still going, and I'm glad that I can still play the game, at least in a way that's similar to what Kaga intended. Not completely the same, but I can at least play it on my classic mode, hard difficulty, and get a good challenge out of it. What you may not know is Shozo Kaga still makes games. He left Nintendo, but now he makes his own Saga series, and he sticks to, from what I understand, plenty of his own original formulas. I have not played them yet. I maybe hope to one day. I'm just a very busy man with plenty of games to play. But hey, if that's up your alley, if the idea of going, balls to the wall, military leader, high difficulty, there are still some games like that from Kaga for you. In case it isn't obvious, really a big part why I wanted to make this video was just because I really do feel like Fire Emblem deserves respect. At least a little bit more. I'm not asking for a lot, I'm just asking for a little bit more. And Kaga too. Poor guy comes up with a great idea, but people just didn't care for it. That's really hard. I love the respect overall that From Software gets, and the amazing games they pump out. They deserve it. They're so good. But I just wish Fire Emblem had something more. Now, I imagine some of you are thinking, well, hold on a minute. When Dark Souls first came out, it was pretty niche. It wasn't like explosively popular compared to maybe say something like Call of Duty. It's only really recently, because of Elden Ring, that From Software has become more of a household name.
Oh, Elden Ring.
Yeah, that's true, but Dark Souls has always garnered at least some respect. Plenty of people, even if they don't like the series or the From Software games, they at least respect them. Fire Emblem, on the other hand, what do you hear? You mean those characters from Super Smash Bros.? That's Fire Emblem, right?
When you say
Dark Souls,
I go. When you say
Fire Emblem,
I go.
I think it's safe to say that plenty of people love Dark Souls enough to keep the series going. Fire Emblem just couldn't get enough people interested in it. And maybe it's wrong of me, I do blame a lot of the Super Smash Bros. Fan base, but I'm not going to talk too much about them because I get really, really ticked off when I do, because they're maybe the worst fan base in the world. But yeah, I just wish there was more positive media about Fire Emblem, and less of it being more that one weird game that Nintendo makes, especially because Fire Emblem has some of the darkest themes of any Nintendo game. And I stand by that. There's some really messed up situations throughout all the series. It's bold. It's something that Nintendo needs, and a lot of people don't recognize it for that either. So now I'd like to go over some arguments that kind of go against what I'm talking about in this video in regards to what really made Fire Emblem blow up in popularity. First, let's get the one out of the way that I think is the weakest, and that's the waifu argument, that the emphasis on waifus is what really made the series blow up. Well, back in my day, in the GBA days, there were plenty of websites like Serranus Forest still going, but back in the day, that was the place to be if you were a Fire Emblem fan. And there were still plenty of discussions on there about like who you thought was hot, who you thought was the best to pair with this character. There was still a lot of that kind of waifu talk. Yes, it did get more of an emphasis, but it was kind of always there. At least, that's what I see. The next point, I think, is a lot stronger, that the real thing that saved Fire Emblem was better marketing. I understand that, and marketing can really help a product that is struggling. It can really help something that deserves more attention get attention. However, how many times have you heard people say, I was playing Super Smash Bros., I saw the Fire Emblem characters, and I wondered, who are these guys? What are their games? And then I fell in love with Fire Emblem after that. I've lost track of how many times I've heard that story. The thing is, Fire Emblem has been advertised by Super Smash Bros., for better or for worse, for a very long time. People have known about it since Marth and Roy were in Melee. So I think it's gotten more attention in the past than people give it credit for. It's not like there was no marketing for it. Yes, better marketing absolutely helped, but again, I'm drawn to the fact that the developers have stated that casual mode is what people really play Fire Emblem on. From everything I've looked at, what it really comes down to is people would look at Fire Emblem, and in most cases, they would say, oh, permadeath? Oh, difficulty? Yeah, not interested. It wasn't really until casual mode became a mainstay that people really flooded on board. I can understand the marketing argument, but I still think that it was casual mode that really made Fire Emblem get more popular. Thank you so much for watching and listening to a crazy man and his ramblings. Or, hey, maybe you agree with me. But whatever you think, please let me know in the comment section below. I am totally down to hear your thoughts on this. Whether it's about difficulty in general, whether it's about Fire Emblem specifically, or if you just want to talk about your favorite Souls experience, whatever you want, just let me know in the comments below. For future reference, I do plan on mostly covering Fire Emblem in this channel. I may take a little dip into other topics such as the Souls series, but just wanted to give a window into what the future of this channel will be about, and if that's something that interests you, then don't forget to
Subscribe